The third leg of the stool is the educational framework, and it deals, by the way, I want to say this about enrollment in passing here, and this will be dealt with in more depth later. There's no question that the district is going through a change in demography, where that the lower elementary grades are now beginning to lose students, and the upper high school grades are the ones that are swelling in enrollment. And this is very common, I just want to say this, to a lot of things that are happening in other parts of the country, because we've gone through different waves of baby boom, baby bust, echo boom, and echo bust. And we're really right now in the echo bust generation, so that will start impacting the lower elementary grades, and it will begin moving into the middle and high schools in the next several years. And some of the documents that we supplied you with tonight are actually information that Decision Insights has started drafting about different scenarios about projections for the next 10 years. The third area is the framework of the schools itself, like how do we want our schools organized? What size schools do we want? What grade configurations do we want? Because right now we have K-5, 6, 8, K-8, even a K-12 school. There's issues that we have to wrestle with, like open enrollment versus neighborhood schools. And there's a whole series of things that are going to impact where schools are going to be needed and how many schools will be required. And the fourth one, obviously, is the cost. And what we're referring to here is what's the cost of renovation or construction. So as we get into this, we divided the district into 7 planning regions. And these regions pretty much emulate the high school attendance areas. Our experience in working in different cities across the country, like Phoenix and Scottsdale and in Charleston, South Carolina, or Grand Rapids, Michigan, has been the best way to get your hands on what the facility needs are is by taking the district that's this large and breaking it into different planning regions. So we said that since the school district's already divided into high school regions, that it probably makes sense to use those regions for planning purposes. Each planning area, a committee has been formed. And this is broad representation of parents, teachers, administrators, and community reps from each of the schools involved. Each of the planning committees is probably about 30 to 40 people. They're very large, but we've also found that to be workable. A lot of times people say, well, this really needs to be an inclusive process, not an exclusive process. And so we're just started meeting last night. We met in 2 of the regions, in Jordan and Lakewood, and tonight in Avalon, and then during the rest of the week we'll be meeting in the rest of the regions. They are also going to be working and are already starting to divide into some subcommittees. And one of those subcommittees is going to look at these community dialogues. The first set of these dialogues are scheduled for the last week of November. A dialogue is not a hearing. A dialogue is really an opportunity for the community, and I mean everybody that wants to participate, and we'd like to get hundreds of people out for these community dialogues, to provide input around topics like school size and class size and grade configuration. And a lot of these things have a huge impact on taking a look at the numbers and the types and the quantities of facilities that may be required. The way we do that is we hand out a lot of background information when people enter. We have them, we go through the background material with them, and then they work through questionnaires about these issues. And as they work through those, then we work them in groups of 6 to 8 persons where each group starts working through these questions. And then basically what they start doing is they start coming up with what they think is the appropriate response for each area of the city. At the same time, what I want to emphasize too is that often in education, as well as in other government activities, we spend 90% of our time, a lot of times, arguing about the 10% of the things that we disagree on. And this really starts helping us understand what are the things that we do agree on and how we want our schools organized and what we want our schools to look like. At the same time that this is going on, there will also be a web-based community dialogue that will go on, and that will go on for a period of a couple of weeks. So persons that are not at these meetings can also participate in the input sessions. So we think by having these 7 area community dialogues plus the web-based community dialogue that there's going to be a tremendous opportunity for participation in helping to structure and format this plan. Following that, these community dialogues you can see here, this is just what will come out. We also go to the extent with this is that everybody that attends the community dialogue and everybody that signs in, there are reports for every dialogue that are prepared, and everyone is mailed a copy of the reports. I really believe that the important element here is transparency. The important element here is the old Holiday Inn advertisement that said, the best surprise is no surprise. And the only way to do that is to make sure that all the communication structures are fully operating. After all the input from the facility condition assessments, the demographics, the community dialogues, we will then start formulating out options for each area of the city. And what we'll do here is take a look in this area of the school district. We may want to take a look at adding a new elementary school or consolidating elementary schools or putting additions on elementary schools or renovating elementary schools. There may be options for what might be done at the middle school and the high school level, etc. And because I always find there's more than one way of attacking the facility needs in a school district. And then so there will be like a series of options. In the area planning committees, we'll have a heavy input into this. The administration will have a heavy input into this because we almost develop through GIS systems and other mechanisms where we can start taking a look at, okay, if we put a new elementary school in this area, what's the impact? What's the impact on student populations? What's the impact on social and racial composition? What's the impact on the adjacent schools? If we take a look at putting an addition on a building, or coming out of the educational framework sessions and the community dialogues, there may be major discussions about what do we want to do about temporary and portable space. Do we want to replace that with permanent space, and how do we do that? So there's a lot of options that will come out here. And then from that, we'll go through the second round of community dialogues in February. And these dialogues will be presenting out the options for each area of the city. And then people will be going through and rating and ranking the different options and trying to build a consensus about what the preferred option and the priorities are in each area of the city. There is also a district-wide advisory committee that's being formed. And at that point, all the input from the 7 area committees will go to the district-wide committee to help formulate the overall district-wide recommendations. I want to say this is that as this process goes on, even with a board, there will have to be periodic updates about what the progress is going on. I also want to say to the board, as well as everybody else, that the websites will be constantly updated, so the most up-to-date information will be present constantly. And also, when we get done with the first community dialogues, there will be a formal report that comes back that talks about what the educational framework might be to help guide the development of the facility options that will have to be presented to the board in some type of a formal session, probably the first of the year. So coming out of here will be area recommendations, a draft district-wide plan, and then at that point, probably late next spring, early next summer, will be board work sessions on the draft plan itself. The plan will lay out, again, it will lay out here's what needs to be done, not just for 2007 or 2008. It will probably be a 10-year plan, and it will probably be divided into phases, where phase 1 may be a period of 2 or 3 years, and then there'll be a phase 2 of 2 or 3 years, and a phase 3 of 2 or 3 years, so that that when you approve a plan, you may approve the overall plan eventually, but you may actually implement the first phase. So that's in a nutshell how this is going to unfold, and we're really looking forward to it. And I'll turn it back to Carrie here in a minute too.